Please welcome Dylan McGee.
Hi, everyone! So there are a lot of jokes about how I'm the time tyrant back there, but I snuck myself in the run of show. And that's because last night, first of all, how great was Katie Couric? Woo! Well, she gets even better. I had to come out here because, as I mentioned, she was my hero and then became my friend. And today she proved what friends are really all about. Kara Swisher was supposed to be doing this next interview. She sadly has the flu and couldn't make it. And with less than 24 hours notice, Katie stepped in. So let's give it up for Katie. But I want to take it one more step because Katie has created incredible Katie Couric media. You gotta follow her on Instagram because she's hilarious. I mean, she went to the Oscar party and she's like, yeah, I did my own glam squad. You gotta sign up for her newsletter, Wake Up Now, and her podcast, Next Question. Anyway, everyone needs a little Katie Couric in their life every day, and so she's probably dying back there that I'm saying this. But I just wanted to give Katie Couric a little love for stepping in and doing a favor for a friend.
Please welcome Olivia Wilde and Katie Couric.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all again. I have no idea what's happening in New Hampshire, by the way, which is kind of nice. So if anybody knows, please see me after my interview with the great Olivia Wilde. I'm so happy to be here with you, Olivia.
Happy to be here.
You know, I've long admired Olivia. We've gotten to know each other a little bit through the years, so this is a real treat for me. So, you know, before we talk about Booksmart, before we talk about the industry and your directorial debut in the wonderful film Booksmart, I want to talk to you a little bit about your background because you have such an interesting background in terms of what your parents did for a living. Tell us a little bit about that, Olivia, because I think it really informed who you became and how it informed who you became.
Yes, I come from a long line of journalists. My grandparents were journalists, my aunts and uncles are journalists, my parents are journalists, my cousins, my brother's now a journalist. But being raised by two journalists, including a woman who, like yourself, had come up in the world of journalism, which is obviously dominated by men and has been for a long time, I grew up with a very clear example of a woman who was changing her own industry just by sheer will and skill. And so it affected me in a lot of ways.
You did, your mom did a lot of documentary films, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And growing up, Olivia, did you think about becoming a journalist yourself?
It's so funny. I didn't ever think of it, probably because I saw how truly thankless it can be. I witnessed the blood, sweat, and tears that went into every piece for 60 minutes, for which, you know, it might be 6 months of work for 12 minutes of film, or her frontline pieces, or she worked with Peter Jennings at ABC News for years and years. And I admired it, but for me, I knew I was a storyteller in a different way. But what it did inform was the idea of using film to let people into the lives and stories of people who might be very different from them. The idea of kind of introducing empathy through film storytelling.
And did you have, I'm always fascinated too by, you know, if people had an epiphany at some point, if they had an experience, an aha moment that made them think, yes, this is really what I want to do.
Well, it's interesting. I've been thinking a lot about it because I was a very dramatic kid. I mean, all kids are dramatic in different ways, but I was, I loved theater. I loved movies. And because of that, everyone suggested that I become an actress. And I think we do this to little girls. We say to them, you love movies, you should be a movie star. That's sort of a pipe dream. It's like telling a little girl she's a princess. And my mom was really helpful in knowing, well, telling me if you want to be an actress, this is how it works. You go to school, you study, you read, you study, and you work, and I believe in you. But I very quickly internalized the idea of women's roles in the movie-making world are through performance and through acting. So that's what I studied. And then by the time I was about 26, I started realizing that after spending the last 10 years on film sets, what I wanted to do was direct, and I was ready to make the change.
So why? Why did you want to direct, and what did you see in your world that made you think, gosh, I want to be calling the shots, literally?
I saw some great examples of leadership and some not so great examples of leadership, and the difference between the two became very clear to me. And I think once you can identify the problem, you better start owning your responsibility to demonstrate the better alternative. You can't just sit there and complain and complain. If you have a better way to do it, you should do it yourself. And I think I started noticing that the way that film sets are often structured are not conducive to anybody's best work. And then I would work with a great director who was communicative and supportive. And I would think, well, that's what I want to do. I think I can provide that experience for people. I also, of course, noticed just the sheer lack of female voices in filmmaking. And after having spent so many years on film sets, I thought, this is my responsibility. I am able to shift this paradigm from within. But that took overcoming the fear that came with not having trained from the beginning as a director. I hadn't gone to film
Well, how did
school.
you make up for that? You know, because
Yeah.
you know, I always see actors that then go into directing. I'm like, do they know how to direct because they've been directed, or what did you have to do to really hone those skills, which are quite different, I'm assuming?
Quite different, but it's all about paying attention when you are on a set and asking the right questions. So, you know, my sort of de facto film school was working for people like Spike Jonze or Martin Scorsese or Ron Howard. I had this opportunity.
I've heard of them.
You know, some not too shabby teachers who were very generous with their time and were thrilled at the idea that I was interested in more than just my role within.
Would you ask
the
them
process.
questions when you worked with them?
Yes.
And kind of look at, and you had, I imagine you had to really closely observe what they were doing.
Yes.
Which
And-
is a lot of work, and do what you had to do,
Yes.
right?
I think that, you know, actresses aren't, there's this sort of idea that an actress is a diva who gets swept onto set to have her moment, and then she gets whisked back to her trailer, and don't look at her in the eyes, and there's this sense of separation between the quote unquote talent and the crew. And I rejected that from an early point in my career. I said, I don't want to leave the set. If I'm not acting, I'm going to sit by the monitor. I'm going to listen in on every conversation. I was always fascinated by the cinematographer and what was happening, what happens when a lens is being changed in the old days when the film was being reloaded. And I just started paying attention. And very quickly, people started saying to me, I think you want to be in this chair. I think you want to direct. And I owe a lot to the people who generously gave me their time in answering those hundreds of thousands of questions. And they continue to do that as I still act in other people's movies, and basically just, I'm a spy on their sets, stealing all of their good ideas.
Well, you know, you talk about the industry, sort of the opportunities for women, and according to the Center for the Study of Women in TV and Film, women comprised only 20% of all the top roles, including directors, writers, and producers who worked on the top 100 grossing films in 2019. You know, we're not going to talk, you know, we're not going to focus exclusively on this, but what is taking so long, Olivia, to get those numbers at a higher level?
I think that in order to change those numbers, we have to change the way people are hired. I think when anyone in a position of power is basing their decisions on resume, what they will of course end up doing is perpetuating the system, because when women haven't been given as many opportunities to take on those leadership roles, their resumes are not as long. Even I now in the position of hiring, let's say, production designers, I can look at the resume of a man who's done 50 movies, won tons of awards, and he seems like the more valuable option than the woman who might be brilliant, have a great take on the concept, but her resume looks so thin next to this guy, so I guess I'll just go with this guy.
Yeah.
And if we continue to do that, then we will perpetuate the system. So I think it's embracing a meritocracy.
I did an hour for National Geographic as part of this series called America Inside Out on gender inequality in Hollywood and Silicon Valley. And I went to the set of The Handmaid's Tale, and the director said, you know, she said, it's so hard to get your first
Yes.
break. And men just hire these guys because they have more faith and trust or confidence in them. And as you said, they can build up this list of credits, which helps them achieve more and more and more.
Yes.
But if you don't get those first few things under your belt,
Yeah.
you're kind of hosed.
That's why I think it's about empowering women to make their first films by having more grant programs. I really benefited from a short film grant program that Glamour magazine used to do. They should do it again. It was called Glamour Real Moments, and they gave a pretty great budget for a short film to a bunch of women every year, and it was the first time I had been kind of given the steering wheel, and I so enjoyed the process that I thought, that's it, this is all I want to do. And then I started directing music videos so that my reel continued to grow, and I learned until I earned the opportunity to direct a feature. But even at that point, it was a female studio executive, Megan Ellison at Annapurna, who recognized that I was ready. And she took a huge risk in hiring me. And to this day, it feels that the riskier choice is the unproven woman.
Right.
Because we are used to this narrative of the scrappy young film school guy who knows, could be the next Steven Spielberg. So give him this chance. There aren't as many examples for those people in positions of power to draw from of women who, out of the gate, had something that worked, and therefore it's harder to take a risk on them. So we need to empower more women to have their first film made.
Right, and I know you believe deeply in sort of this idea of once you are in that spot, you have to start mentoring other women and do what the men have done for years, which is give the job to their buddies or someone who looks just like them.
That's right, exactly. Katelyn Deaver, who stars in our movie, just directed her first music video. And I'm very proud of her because she has wanted to direct for a long time. And she said, Liv, I don't know how to get going. I don't know how to start this. And she has a band. And I said, you have an easy way to start this. Direct your video, start building your reel. I think it's about mentoring and encouraging, and it's also about helping them get the job, making the calls, helping people get in the room. For a long time, I feel like for one woman to feel she was succeeding and breaking through all the barriers and the glass ceiling, there was this sense of, I must go at it alone, because if I bring others with me, it'll be harder to get through this small crack in the ceiling.
Yeah, and I think that was true in television news in some ways.
Yeah.
You know, when there are very few spots, as magnanimous as you want to be, you're sometimes just not, because, you know, there are very few spots.
Yeah, it's true. And now I think that's changing. I've benefited from people like Greta Gerwig, who is giving me crew members that she loves, that she relies upon. By recommending them to me, she's making them unavailable for her projects, but she so wants to support me and my next endeavor that she's like, okay, you got to call these 5 people. They're my trusted allies.
That's so awesome.
Sharing your brain trust, sharing what you've learned is something that has a huge effect. But for a long time, people felt, okay, I've got to protect these secrets for my own success.
Yeah, I find it so gratifying to see women being much more generous with one another, because, you know, I'm a little older than you are. And I think that my generation, I think there wasn't that feeling of let me support you, it was so intensely, fiercely competitive.
Well, for so long, I have even felt that it was about being a part of a boys' club. And now it's about being a part of a girls' club proudly and feeling power in that. For so long, I felt if I can prove that I can hang with the guys, I will be more powerful. And that really shifted for me over the past couple years. And I think it down to, you know, who my collaborators are, who my representatives are. I signed with an incredible female agent, Maha Dakil, who's changed my entire career. Finding female mentors who believe in you. It's not about getting in with the dudes. It's about finding a woman who totally believes in you and understands your situation and can actually empower you in a real way.
And continue to fight for you, right?
Yes,
because
every day.
Yeah, there are going to be obstacles. Well, congratulations on winning the Independent Spirit Award for Best First Feature this weekend for
Thank you.
Booksmart. So was directing everything you dreamed it would be and more? Or was there something about the process that surprised you? Or what did you learn?
I learned that many of the parts of the system that we accept just to be true, the way a film set works, the hierarchy and how it exists, the process and how it exists, are actually something, it's actually something we have more control of than we assume. So when I got onto a set, it was like, okay, I'm finally steering this ship. Do I have to steer it the same way I've seen guys do it, or can I do my own thing? And I can do my own thing. So that was exciting to say, I'm gonna change the way this usually works. For instance, before the first day of shooting, I sat down the cast and the crew and I said, I know there is a necessary hierarchy in place for efficiency in any organization, but I want to let you know there is no difference in the value between any of you. This grip electric is the same value as this leading actress. And if we can really embrace that philosophy, things will move differently. And of course they did. Sharing information with everyone. I think in any organization, there's a tendency to share information with a very limited group.
Right, or very vertically, right?
Exactly. And I said, we are gonna share information with everyone. Every person on this 120-person film crew will understand what we're shooting and why and how we're gonna do it. And that changed the efficiency because everyone was willing to work harder and faster because they felt valued. And that was really empowering. I enjoyed hearing people say, this is my best experience. I've been in this film business for years and this is my favorite experience. This has given me faith in this business again. So I loved the opportunity to use what I have learned and to make it a better environment for the actors as well, because of course, my personal experience allowed me to give them a better time. You know, even directing a sex scene, I thought, okay, I'm finally gonna teach everyone what a closed set means. And I said to our actresses who were doing this intimate scene, I said, when you are on your next film set, I want you to demand what I'm gonna show you today. A closed set means the people in the room are the essential crew members. Instead of an operator filming the scene, I had the cinematographer operate. Boom, one person gone. Instead of any ADs or anybody else, it was me, the person holding the camera, and a focus puller, and the actors. All the monitors around a set, usually there's 30 monitors at different places on a set, all turned off.
Yeah.
Having an AD police that walk around. People try to turn the monitors on. They have to turn those off. It takes a lot of effort, but it's one example of providing an example of how things can be and telling these actresses, now go off and demand this new standard.
Yeah, that's awesome. There must have been, though, times when you had to, you know, it sounds like you created an incredible, awesome environment for everybody working on the film. But there must have been times when you had to be like, okay, people, let's do this, and you had to be direct. I interviewed Elizabeth Moss for this same episode that I mentioned, available on Hulu if anybody wants to watch it. And she said, you know, as an executive producer of Handmaid's Tale, she had to get comfortable being difficult, which I thought was so interesting that she says, you know, basically being direct, and I've had this problem my whole career. You know, I'm just a very direct person. You know, I'm not really good at sucking up, and I just kind of say what I feel, but in a very honest, respectful way.
Yeah.
But I feel like women, and I think probably a lot of women in this room, and Olivia, I'm curious if you had this experience, you know, they say something directly, and, you know, maybe they're not being all sweet or whatever, funny or deflecting it with humor. They just say what they mean and mean what they say. And then they walk away and they're like, oh, I'm such a bitch. They think I'm such a bitch. I was so bad. I hope they don't hate me. And it's the whole likability thing. And I'm wondering how you, as a director, as the person in charge, full stop, dealt with this likability issue, because it's plagued me my entire career.
I think people appreciate clarity. And it was easy to focus on being clear and to allow people to feel heard and then feel that my demands were warranted and fair, and therefore I wouldn't regret having made that statement. As long as I'd listened and then been very clear about my point of view. I think where leadership can seem reckless and unpleasant and, aggressive is when people don't feel heard. So it is a part of the film process that things move very quickly and things become very chaotic and things change constantly. But you never have to become a tyrant. You can be very clear and direct, but I think people really appreciate it because they feel those boundaries are in place and they're being kept safe. I think you can always communicate why you are asking them to work harder, why you need this thing to be different, and to pick those battles. I remember a moment where a props person brought the wrong prop to set and we were under the gun for time, and everyone expected me to lose my mind and blow up because that's what usually happens, and people throw things and they yell and they think that seems powerful. And I said, there's no reason. It'll be more efficient if we just wait for the correct prop to come. I heard someone gave me the directing advice the other night, said, oh, Stanley Kubrick used to say the key to directing is to have at least 5 arguments a day on set so that everyone feels on their toes. And I was like, that's the most male philosophy of leadership I've ever heard. I can't think of anything that would make people less efficient and less invested than perpetuating tension through arguments. I believe in clarity and directness, but without making it, it doesn't ever have to become aggressive. But the thing of fear of being a bitch is a real thing, and it's from politics to Hollywood and everything in between, of course. I remember Halle Berry saying to me years ago, she gave me the advice, she said, when I finally was comfortable with being a bitch, my entire career changed for the better. And I was like, that's brilliant. I do think we have to get out of our own way in that way.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Oscars, because a lot of people were bemoaning the fact that a female director wasn't nominated this year. There's been a lot of conversation about, I interviewed Greta for my podcast about Little Women and men not wanting to see it. And I remember for this same episode, I talked to Meryl Streep. I'm quite the name dropper today, aren't I? Anyway, I called Meryl and I said, Meryl, no, I asked her, I said, this was before Me Too, before Time's Up. Like, why are there so few female directors in Hollywood? Like, what is this, what is keeping that from happening? And she said men don't really like to see women, movies about women, but women do like to see stories about men. And yet, as many men come up to me to say they love Booksmart as women, truly. And so I believe men do want to see these stories. In some ways, we shouldn't care about accolades and awards. It's about the work. And in other ways, those awards lead to opportunities and pay parity. And so it's a complicated thing. You can't be what you can't see. So we have to lift up these women and show everyone that they're here and that it's an example. When I got my DGA card in the mail for the first time, I opened it and I burst into tears because Nora Ephron was on the card. Every year every time they reissue the card, they pick a different director, and it's always a man. And the year I got it was Nora Ephron, and I was so moved because I thought, male directors are getting this card too. And they're looking at this and they're seeing an incredible female director as an example of what they're aspiring to become. So that's why awards are an important place for women to be represented. And I do believe that several of the best films this year that I loved were directed by women and deserve to be celebrated. But here's the thing, we're unstoppable. Oscars or no Oscars, these women, everyone from Alma Harrell to Lulu Wang, there's so many of us, and we're gonna keep working. But yeah, of course, we should lift up these examples. We should mention Hustlers, Little Women, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, The Farewell, Honey Boy, Booksmart, all directed by women. Yes. So, which is great and so exciting. Well, I see last question on the monitor. So I want to talk to you, Olivia, about what you're doing now, because it sounds like I'm sure you've got a lot of things in development, as they say, but you're working on Don't Worry, Darling. You're going to star in it, direct it, produce it. It's a psychological thriller about a 1950s housewife. It sounds intriguing, so tell us about it.
It's a thriller about the patriarchy, and it's very weird. And it's a lot of fun, and it's a huge departure from Booksmart, and it's a huge risk. But I think we also have to stop ourselves from becoming pigeonholed. And very quickly when a woman achieves some success with a certain genre or type of movie, it's like, great, let's just give her more things like this. So I immediately wanted to stake my claim as someone who's capable of telling different stories. I also love scary stories. I love thrillers. And this is a genre that's typically dominated by male directors. But it's a huge leap of faith. And I think I have learned that it is worth taking those leaps. So I'm reminding myself to continue doing it.
And it must be challenging to put on those 3 hats for one
But women
project.
are multitaskers. This is what we do.
Yeah.
It's, I think also I'm a mother of 2 kids, but even if you don't have kids, women are natural we literally biologically have wider peripheral vision. We're better at this.
and since the theme of this conference is not done.
Yes.
Tell me if you look ahead, Olivia, or Liv, now that we're like this. Liv, as you look ahead and you think about like the next 10 or 20 years, what do you see unfolding in when you kind of allow yourself to dream about ultimately what you hope will happen?
I hope that we get away from creating special divisions for women in all industries, and it becomes less of a sort of like charity project and an obligatory sort of division and just change the way that companies work. And I hope that happens across every industry, but within Hollywood, I appreciate winning, Best Female Director, but I would rather just be considered as a director. I think we should get rid of the gender-specific acting categories as well in general. I think we have to elevate women to their rightful place as an equal partner. And I think it's going to take more people taking risks on women and more women taking risks on themselves.
That's a great way to end this conversation, Olivia Wilde. Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you so much.
It was fun.
Yeah.